ahead and put us on the air. Thank you. This is the agenda review. There comes Councilman. Sorry, staff. They listened to him. See, they didn't listen to me. All right, we'll work on you guys. Thank you very much. We're going to call this meeting to order for agenda review for March 11th. If you could please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. This is the only meeting we will have this month, so we get to do something this time, which would be Employee of the Month. And this month, I bet, let's see, can anybody guess who it is? Louis. Louis Rivera. Come on up, Louis.
Good afternoon. So we're here today to recognize Louis. Louis is on our utility administrative engineering team right now. He leads our utility GIS effort. And Louis came to us, and he doesn't like the attention, came to us in 2010. He worked in the private sector, and he was affected by the recession. So fortunately for us, he came to the village of Wellington. And he started out, of all things, on our lift station crew. So when I got here, one of my primary objectives was to really move forward aggressively with our utility GIS project, but we didn't have anybody internally to really carry that heavy lift. So our field superintendent, Corey Robinson, came to me one day a couple years ago, and he said, you know, I have a guy on my lift station crew, and his talents certainly aren't being fully utilized. He's very good in computers, and I really think he can help. So we got him a desk and put him in the meter bench testing little. I don't know if you can even call it an office. I didn't even think it had air conditioning, and he really has excelled tremendously. I mean, where we were 2 years ago with utility GIS, and that's everything for us, from outage management to asset management, and where we are today is a testament to Louis. He's extremely professional. And more importantly, has great relations with our field crew. It's imperative that we have that because they're the ones that are out there collecting the data and working with Louis every day. So he comes to work, he gives 110%. He's extremely conscientious and professional. I'd like to recognize Nicole McPherson, head of GIS, that she nominated Louis. She works closely with him, but he's a wonderful team member, and I'm very thankful to have him. So I give you Louis.
Thank you, everyone. This is uncomfortable.
We know. It's uncomfortable for us.
You only have 6 minutes.
6 minutes, perfect. I only need 2. Thank you, first and foremost. Thank you, Shannon.
Welcome.
Nicole, Bill, Brad, Corey in the back. So it's awesome. I love what I do. I had the opportunity. I'm very blessed in the sense to have great management around and, you know, give me the opportunity, and I love what I do, and I know it's recognizing me, but it's more than just myself. You know, the whole utility, IT, the support, the management, you know, it's really a team effort that we do, and I love it. Every day I come to work, I'm very appreciative, you know, for the management and just the opportunity I have for growth. So,
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Well, there's not much more important than lift station duty, but that's a pretty important thing to do. So we appreciate the way you came in and the way you moved up. And I got to see you present at the GIS Expo.
And he has been doing that. Yeah.
And it was really it was a good presentation, and seeing how you guys took the knowledge that you had about utilities and you tapped it into GIS and made it work for all of us. So thanks for your good work.
Thank you.
Louis, can I give you some advice?
Sir.
Learn how to take compliments.
That's what I told him. I said, they don't come often, take them when you get them.
So congratulations on the job well done.
Congratulations. Your speech was one of the best. You didn't seem nervous at all.
And continue, like it says, crushing every goal assigned to you. That's.
And he will, I have no
There you
doubt.
go. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for making us look good, guys.
Okay, that brings us to presentations and proclamations, and the first item under presentations is presentations of the audit results for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2018.
Just so as not to surprise anybody, I wanted to add something before that.
Okay?
Michael, could you bring the car? Could we
Oh, the
acknowledge?
Pinewood Derby car? I could
The
bring
Pinewood
that.
Derby
We have a
car.
proclamation that it finished the race.
That it finished.
PBSO.
But I want to acknowledge, it was really styling, and I want to make sure that it gets some video time, because it was really it was styling, and it wasn't slow. It wasn't as slow as last year's car. I think we determined that.
We're pretty sure of that.
We're pretty sure. So, and it was really nice, and I appreciate that
I
effort,
think,
so.
if I might suggest, let's put it on the third item there so that the fire department doesn't have an opportunity to say that they.
Oh,
I like that.
oh, all right, yeah, we'll do it after that.
Hopefully they're not watching
Okay.
this.
I'm certain of it.
But we're on to them anyways. We've marked their car with like an embedded device. So if they do happen to maybe use the same car again, we're going to know it this time. We've embedded that one.
Okay.
All
I
right, so
think you all are
after.
meeting individually with the auditors, and they'll do their presentation tomorrow night. There were no,
We did want to run through it this afternoon briefly, if
Go
that's
ahead.
agreeable with you. And so if Raquel and Anna would come up, please.
I'm sorry, I didn't even see Raquel here.
Slid in quietly there.
And I go through my yearly inquisition with her, which isn't really as bad as it could be. She's a very nice person. Anna, on the other hand, grills me a lot.
You may just want to stop talking here. I mean,
Yeah,
this is.
Very good point, very good point. So I think some of you have the audit binders, but if not, we'll start on page 27 in your big notebooks. And it's actually page 1 and 2, numbers 1 and 2 of the spiral bounder, whichever one you're looking at. And Raquel will give a little summary.
Thank you, Tanya.
They're good, really.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I want to do this really quickly and briefly, so I'm going to run through, and please stop me if you have any questions as I go through. As Tanya said, we're going to start on page 27. If you have your folder, but your binder, page 1 and 2, if you have the spiral book. And that first report is our opinion letter for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2018. And the very last paragraph of that page has our opinion. And we have what we call a clean or an unmodified opinion. So we believe the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects. So that's a good thing for the village. I am going to move now quickly to page 17 and 18 or 45, 46 of the binder. And this is the balance sheet for the governmental funds of the village. On page 17, you'll see that the total assets for the government activities were 74.6 million. So that's how much assets the village had at September 30th, 2018. On page 18 shows the liabilities and fund balance. Second line from bottom shows the fund balance for the total governmental funds of 64.273 million. Of that amount, 35 million came from your general fund. In your general fund, of that 35 million in fund balance, you have an unassigned fund balance of 19.1 million, and those resources can be used at the council's discretion. All right, I want to move now to 2021 in the spiral, 4950 if you have the binder. So on page 20 or 49, we have the revenues earned for that fiscal year ended for your governmental funds. Total revenues were 61.8 million. For all the funds combined. Of that, your general fund was approximately 42.6 million in terms of revenues. On the next page, it has your expenditures and your fund balance. Your total expenditures for the fiscal year were approximately 57.8 million. So you had an excess of revenues over expenditures of approximately $4 million. Third line from bottom shows your net change in fund balance. So that would be your revenues minus your expenditures plus or minus your financing sources. And that came out to $9.2 million. If we go by fund, the general fund increased by $2.9 million. The building fund increased by $2.3. The Acme Improvement Fund had a decrease of $416,000. Your capital projects fund increased by $1 million, and debt service just under $5,000. And then your other non-governmental funds increased by $3.2 million. The majority of that was from your surtax fund. All right, we're going to move to pages 23 and 24 in the spiral, 53, 54 in the notebook, in the binder. So this is the statement of net position for your proprietary or enterprise funds. You had a total current assets in your enterprise funds of $70.2 million. And you had total net position of $175 million. Of that, $111 million was your investment in your capital assets for your enterprise funds, and your unrestricted funds, which can be used at council's discretion, is a total of $14.97 million. Of that, 9.8 is in your utility system, 4 million is in your solid waste system, and there is just under 1.1 million in the Lake Wellington Professional Center. On the next page, we have your statement of revenues and expenses, changes in net position. So you had total operating revenues of just under 24 million for all three of those funds. You had operating expenses of 23.2 million, which gave you income from operations of 690,000. I'm going to make a big jump almost all the way to the bottom. The third line from bottom shows the overall change in your net position. So in total, that went down by 913,000. That's a combination of your utility system bringing in 844,000, your solid waste system using 1.8 million, and then Lake Wellington bringing in just under 45,000 for that fiscal year ended.
And I'd like to add on that, just for notes, the change in the solid waste fund includes partial expenditures for IRMA. That was split between the previous fiscal year and this fiscal year. So that excess of expenditures includes those for IRMA. We are expecting reimbursement of over $3 million for that, but that'll probably be 2 to 3 years away. We have not posted an accounts receivable for that until the funds are obligated by FEMA. But we still have a very healthy fund balance overall for the solid waste fund, but that's why there was that excess of expenditures.
And as long as we've caught you at a breaking point here, one of the things that we noted was an increase in the building fund. Usually when the building department has a significant increase in revenue, there is going to be a later, usually about a year later, relatively significant increase in operating expenses, and you'll see the building department coming to you in the next couple of meetings asking for some of that money to go in to do the inspections that were paid for by those revenues last year.
Mm-hmm.
With that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Raquel. Keep going.
Okay. All right, so now I'm going to page 43 in the spiral, 74 in the binder. So now we're in the notes to the financial statements, and the notes have not significantly changed from the prior year. I just thought I should point out to you the debt standing of the village. So in the current fiscal year that we just finished auditing, the village paid off its Series 2014 public service bond, so you no longer have that as a liability. So the only debt right now is your Series 2016 special assessment bond that has a total of $3,060,000, and that's for your Saddle Trail. And so the assessments to the residents in the Saddle Trail region will pay off that debt. So that's not a village obligation currently. You also have $2.3 million in compensated absence and a net pension liability for FRS for $18 million. So now I'm going to make another big jump to page 61 of the spiral, page 94 of the binder. And this is the budgetary comparison schedule for the general fund. So the total revenues that were budgeted was $41.3 million. You actually brought in revenues of $42.6 million. So you brought in $1.3 million more than you expected to. On the expenditures, you budgeted $45.7 million in expenditures, and you actually only spent $41.1. So you underspent your budget by $4.6 million. Now I'm going to make another very big jump to page 101 in the spiral, page 141 in the binder. So this is our internal control over financial reporting and compliance report. For the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2018, we did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in the village's internal controls, nor did we have any other internal control findings that were needed to be reported. And that's just what this report says. On page 103, which would be 143 in the binder, is our opinion on the village's compliance with the investment statute 218-415. And the third paragraph has our opinion on that compliance, and we believe that the village has met all the requirements in that statute. And so that's what that report says. And then on page 105, which is the last page of the report, is our report to management. And I just wanted to point out that we had no current year or prior year findings to be reported in the audit. And that's all I have. Take any questions?
Since we just went through this and we were able to talk to you about it, I think tomorrow night we might have some more interactions because the public will be, more engaged in the conversation. So unless you guys have any questions now.
I would like to thank Raquel for working with us. Anna and the entire OFMB department did an amazing job putting this together. I will not be here tomorrow night. I'll be up in Tallahassee for the FASD Legislative Day, but Anna will be with Raquel tomorrow night, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have at any time with this. But our staff and all the departments did a great job working with the auditor to provide the information for us. It's a very comprehensive review. Raquel and her staff are diligent in reviewing and testing, and we really appreciate that because this is a tool to help us, and that's how we look at it, to help us do a better job.
Hard to do a better job when you didn't have any findings, but keep trying. We like that you're, and there were things that we've talked about, policies and things that we need to make sure we're in compliance with, and you've been good about bringing those to our attention. So
there are things as we go through the audit process every year, as things change, they will point out things. We had some very minor things that most of which we catch, but it is a process that we learn from every year, and we do appreciate the input. And generally, I don't think we've made a suggestion we haven't followed. Have you?
Not thus far.
We try very hard to be as transparent as we can be.
thank you. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
See you tomorrow night.
Next item will be the Palm Beach County Fire Rescue Fiscal Year 18 Annual Report Presentation. Chief Rowley will be here tomorrow night to do that. I don't think he's here tonight. But it's going to go through response times and those types of things for us.
So it's in our packet. We can take a look at it. If we have any questions tomorrow night, he'll be here. All right.
That brings us then to the consent agenda, and the first item on the consent agenda is the proclamation of the Village Council proclaiming March 19th as the Florida Bicycle Month in the Village of Wellington. You may have recalled we got an email from our citizen member of the TPA which we did take a look into the issues with Forest Hill and State Road 7 is a dangerous crossing for bicycles, and we're doing what we can to deal with that. Notwithstanding, I do believe we should declare it Bicycle Month.
And another issue that is an ongoing issue is 16 and under 16, you're supposed to be wearing a helmet. And since I live on the bike path that I can see the kids going to the landings, there's very few helmets being worn. And I don't know if
Hand out
there's,
citations.
I could stand there as they go by. It'll make me really popular amongst the young kids. And I know it's hard because lots of times as parents, we buy them the coolest helmet we can find, maybe one with a ponytail or spiked hair or whatever. We try to buy them helmets that they will actually wear, but sometimes when they leave our driveway, they don't have them on because they don't think they're cool. So just to bring everybody back to the reason we have a bicycle helmet rule is a child was actually hit near Greenview Shores and Wellington Trace years ago and suffered a head injury. So it's something that we need to try to get our kids to do, especially our adults should do it too. And luckily for me, the one time I saw my pediatrician at Okehilly Park when I was riding bikes with my kids, I had mine on. So, but in fact, adults should do it, but children, it's required by law. So is there anything we can do to encourage helmet wearing along with our bicycle month?
I'm sure there is. Let me take a look at it and
I would
see
imagine we're
what
going
we
to do
can
some sort of
and-
social media announcement, so maybe a reminder in there.
Maybe we should cool up our own bicycle helmets, I don't know what you guys say, like, something fun on our own helmets. I don't know.
We do have an annual helmet fitting event at the mall that we can maybe work with Paulette on.
Okay, good.
What month is that? Is it
I'm
the
not
same?
sure.
Oh.
And I think it's
I
coming
think it's
up.
back to school. We do it with the back to school
back to school.
time. And again, it's just really a good idea.
Be a
And
good
I
time.
always wear it when I'm on my motorcycle, and I should always wear it on my bicycle too. So maybe we could have like the whole council ride their bikes with their helmets on and show how cool we look doing. I don't know. We might not be the best examples, but
That might not convince anyone to wear.
might
it.
not.
I agree, Mike.
Might not. I don't know. I know that I have seen my kid with when he was little and going back and forth to school on his bike and come up the driveway and his helmet's hanging on the handlebar, not on his head. So I know it's hard for the parents, but any way we can encourage that.
Okay.
Nonetheless, it's Bicycle Month.
The next item is authorization. It's two parts. Authorization to award a contract for the wastewater treatment facility renewal and rehabilitation project and approval of Resolution 2019-12 amending the utility fund and allocating fund balance for the wastewater. There were two. Shannon will go through all of the details, but just quickly, we only received two bids for this. One of the bidders was deemed to be non-responsive. They simply didn't have any of the required experience. They haven't been in business. They don't have any of the required experience. This is different than the last time that we went through this, where I think Wharton Smith and Weiss were on that. We went with Weiss, even though they had just created that company in Florida. They were the company, they have years of experience nationally, and they created one to do this project. All of their principals had the requisite experience. We did not find that in this case. The protest period has expired. The second company did not file a protest. The reason for the funding resolution is that when we did the rate study for this, actually thought the project would cost about $17 million. The low bid came in at $19 million. There is fund balance in the utility, and Shannon will go through those details with you now, but we are recommending approval.
Good afternoon again. So I'll first talk about the project, and then I want to talk about cost escalations in the marketplace, because I think that's very relevant to the discussion right now. And then we can talk about the non-responsive issue if you'd like. But this is excuse me, I'm just getting over bronchitis. So This is a major renewal and replacement and expansion project to our wastewater treatment plant that is nearing 35 years. So this is a major project that you would expect to implement around this time of any treatment facility of this kind. Basically, again, I'm sorry. Basically, I'll highlight the high points of the project, but it includes significant structural and mechanical rehabilitation of our headworks at the project. It includes demolition and replacement of the headworks odor control systems. We do have some odor challenges at that plant, and this should really help fix that. We are going to be expanding our filter system. We've got various improvements to the biosolids systems. We've got construction of a new control building, reuse control building, and blower building. All of our chemical lines are failing significantly. We have significant breaks, and our operators and maintenance staff are constantly exposed to heavy chemicals when they have to fix those. So that's a big part of the project, replacing all our in-plant chemical lines. We've got a lot of deterioration on structures. We've done a couple emergency repairs. So a big part of this project is to touch all the other structures and bring them up to par. We've got a lot of walkways, stairways, and handrails that don't meet current safety criteria. So we're going to bring all those up to speed, up to code, sorry. And then we've got, obviously, a lot of electrical and instrumentation components that come along with that. So as Paul said, the lowest responsive bid was in the amount of $19,042,020. That's Wharton Smith. Wharton Smith is very well known to us and the village, to me personally in the industry and the village. They did complete the last expansion to the wastewater plant successfully.
When was that?
That was in the late 1990s, early 2000s, I do believe. I may be incorrect, but I'll make sure I correct that for tomorrow. A highly qualified firm in the water and wastewater business. As it relates to the budget, the rate study and the current capital plan carried $17 million, and that number was developed 2 years ago. So I wanted to do some research as it related to cost escalations over the last couple of years, because we've heard a lot about that, but I hadn't really been able to monetize it. So one of the tools we go to in the trade is called Engineering News Record. So Engineering News Record put out a report in December of 2018, and it's called Tariff Issues and Costs Show Few Signs of Ending in 2019. And boiling that down since October 2017 through October 2019, we'll have and are projected to see in total a 17% increase in construction costs. Now that's general, and what I hear from contractors in South Florida is it's even higher than that. I mean, I have contractors telling me that they're paying people $20 an hour to sweep because they can't hire anyone. So the really qualified people, the plumbers, the electrician, the instrumentation people are coming at quite a cost. So this project is a 2-year project. So, contractors come in with a lump sum bid day one, and they have to anticipate cost escalations for over 2 years, because they can't come to us and say, hey, concrete's gone up 20%, we want more money. So they build those uncertainties, and we hear about those uncertainties, the tariffs, what's going to happen with tariffs. Those are all things that contractors build into their lump sum price when they bid. So I think the $2 million difference that we see from 2 years ago, that $17 million to the $19 million today, can be 100% attributed to this cost escalation, which has been validated by Engineering News Record. So I think we're all on the same page. We feel very confident that the low bidder didn't come close to meeting the qualification requirements. And just so you know, the qualification requirements require that the contractor, as the entity submitting the bid, have 5 projects of similar scope and magnitude over the last 10 years with a minimum value of $7 million. And then the entity submitting the bid shall have a minimum experience of 10 years. And as Mr. Schofield said, this company started in August of last year and has no experience at all.
No projects. The first criteria is zero.
0 projects.
Well, So why did we only get 2 then? Is it just because there aren't a lot of qualified?
No,
candidates,
no,
or-
not at all. So what's happened is the market is so saturated right now, we're only seeing 2 bidders. I mean, the water plant, typically 3-4 years ago, we would have 4 or 5 bidders on that project. We bid this project 3 years ago. It was a different project. We ultimately rejected that bid. We had 4 bidders back then. It is just that the water, wastewater industry right now is slammed in South Florida. I mean, Miami-Dade County is investing billions, Broward County is investing billions, you know, smaller utilities like us are investing millions, and there are limited contractors, qualified contractors. So everybody is just really slammed.
What it boils down to is many governments went through the period of the recession without doing a lot, they deferred a lot of maintenance. As the economy recovered, all those projects are now hitting, and you know, when we did the water plant, we had multiple bidders on that. This one, we only had 2, and it's just a function of how busy they are. We're seeing fewer bidders on every type of project these days.
It's tough. So we're seeing cost escalations. You know, we've got another project coming to you in a couple months. I mean, we're seeing it across the board. So, you know, as we retool the capital plan this year, obviously we're going to continue to factor those things into costs. All things the utility can handle. We're in a great financial position, and that's a good thing. And the other thing I wanted to mention is we did have an alternate on the project. It was to rebuild one of our older clarifiers, and that came in over $1 million, and I felt we could defer that cost. So we're not going to award that, and we're going to push that off a couple years.
Okay.
So we did, you know, I looked at it carefully to see what could we defer, you know, let's not spend it now if we don't absolutely have to, and that's one of the things I thought we might be able to defer, so we put it as an alternate, but we're not
But
going
is
to
it one of
award it.
those things that in deferring it, it's going to cost us more later?
I don't think so. That's certainly hard to say, but I'm comfortable deferring it. I don't think it'll cost significantly more because it's primarily metal, and right now metal costs are at an all-time high. So is there a little gamble? Maybe, but not much.
Well, and the discussion about it being a long-term project is just the unknown.
It is, and they build that into their price.
And there's no option for a rebate if it doesn't go up. There's no way we could reclaim any of that.
I mean, on the water plant project, I have a contractor telling me, oh, all our shipping costs have increased. That's not my problem.
Right, because it's a lump sum.
That's not my problem.
This is
That's
what you're
right.
going to bring us.
So in these long-term jobs, these 2-year jobs, you see that factored in, for sure.
And how comfortable are you with the Wharton Smith?
Extremely comfortable.
We have a long history with them here, but we've not had a problem with their deliveries ever.
They specialize in water and wastewater. This is what they do.
I thought I heard you say they did our prior project.
They did. They did the wastewater plant, the last expansion, and successfully. And since I've been here, I brought 2 separate work authorizations to you for emergency repairs, one to the headworks and one to aeration basin 2, and they completed those within budget, actually under budget and well within the timeframes established.
Can we pull this off consent? I think when we spend
Yeah, I
$19 million,
agree.
we should
I think
have
I
a
agree.
detailed discussion as to why we're doing it and
Sure.
why it costs what it costs.
And let me ask this question, and we don't think there's any going back to them and negotiating this price down?
No. I mean, we can ask, but I feel very comfortable. Before the bids came in, I told Mr. Schofield, be prepared for 19.
Why, we can't legally ask?
Oh, we can certainly,
Well, it's
can
a
always
bid.
ask.
It's a bidding, we're
can't.
controlled.
It's sealed bid and that's it? Okay.
these are sealed bid, low bids. I know there may be something if we look at,
If it was a local preference issue, you know, where the local preference applies, you have that ability, but I would not imagine.
How
they
much
would.
does it cost for them to submit? Is that part of it too? If they can't do the work, they're not submitting. If they're so busy, they can't do the work. But also, what's the cost to submit
Oh,
this?
it's significant. I mean, to develop a cost proposal for a job like this, I mean, I would imagine they spend $50,000, $60,000 easy to put this
So
together.
that's
$19 million
one-
project, though, I mean.
Yeah, but that's one reason you're not going to find people bidding on it that aren't going to do it. They're not going to spend the money to produce this bid if they know they can't do the work. And part of the problem was, too, that a lot of workers moved out of the area back when the recession happened, they found work in Nebraska or North Carolina.
And they went to
so-
Texas,
Right.
It's hard. They go where the work is, and they go
Right.
where the work is paying the most, and they don't necessarily commit. So, we're seeing it on every job. You get a lot of turnover just when they get people in doing a good job. They go take another job that they can get $2 more an hour down the street, or in Boca, or in Broward.
Which
So
just makes it all escalate.
It is challenging time to manage projects. I feel that the 19 million is the right number for this job.
All right, so let me
At
just
this
ask
point
the
in time.
obvious,
This
the
will
obvious
become
question.
item 8B then.
Pulling this entirely and saying we're going to wait another year is not.
No.
It
your
will cost you,
opinion.
it has not been
I want to
ours.
ask the question so it's on the record as to why the answer is the
Finish the
answer.
question.
We have deferred maintenance on this plant long enough. We can't afford to defer. We're already doing emergency repairs to the tune of almost $700,000. We can't afford, and that we paid a premium on those, I can assure you.
There are two reasons why pulling it and rebidding it are not really good ideas. Is one, I don't think the costs are going to go down. And two, it has not been my experience either here or any other place that when you pull and rebid a project,
Comes
that
in lower.
unless you take significant elements out of it, you do not come up with lower costs. Generally speaking, you will get a higher cost the second time around.
They know more.
Yeah,
They know
now
more.
it's like an open book. It's like an open book
Right.
test now. They know what the other guy's going to come in at, and it almost seems unfair in that
I
regard.
think, Councilman Dreehouse, we're prepared for this financially. We
I
are
was gonna be-
expecting this, completely prepared for it financially. It does not impact the utility, it does not impact our capital program, and we have a very aggressive capital program, and that's going to continue. So if we could defer it, like I said, the clarifier, we're gonna defer that, then I would say we could defer other parts, but I don't feel that we can
But
do
we've
that.
planned for this. I mean.
We absolutely plan for it. Been planning for a long time, actually.
Yeah, in the rate study, the number was 17 million in the rate study. We have been talking, Shannon has been talking to me about the bids were likely to come in higher. We've seen significant increases in the cost of metal, the cost of concrete, and
Labor.
other types of commodities over the last couple of years. And I don't expect that we're going to see them go down anytime soon. There is just a lot of
Economy is very
construction
hot.
going on.
It's nice to have a good economy, but you do pay more. For sure.
We're not going to just do this one in-house. That was a joke. That was a joke.
I didn't catch it, so I still have plugged ears.
We can do this one in-house if council wants. Be
No.
prepared to pay about 30% more for it.
It'll take about 10 years, too.
It was a joke. I was sorry.
And just thought we
Not-
needed to bring
not
back a
fun.
little levity.
A little levity to the ideas here. All right, there we go.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So
Okay.
it will be on our regular
Yeah.
agenda
As
I'd
tomorrow.
like to see you painting and coating all new and
8B.
existing infrastructure. Councilman McGovern.
Well, I'm sorry, what was
I
that?
say we could have Councilman McGovern paint and coat all the new and existing
Absolutely.
We got some
infrastructure.
coveralls and a brush for you. Just come on out.
Well, the sweeping,
We've got a lot
I
of
think we could
uniforms
manage.
coming
The
up in the next
sweeping we'd
item.
be
There you go.
qualified
Right.
for.
You can take shifts and sweeping.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next item is authorization to use a U.S. Communities contract with Cintas Corporation for facilities management products and solutions. Basically, this is the rental of our employee uniforms, and there's some other things that we use, like
Mats, towels, mats.
that kind of thing. The contract amount that we're asking for is $65,000. I wondered about that because we spent $66,000 last year, so.
It fluctuates depending on the number of uniforms and employees. So it's going to be right where we were last year, basically. We're very happy with Cintas. They've been doing a good job for us. You know, they launder the uniforms for the employees. That's at no cost to the employees. So the employees get 11 sets of uniforms, and they just rotate them. And they bring in
And
6, and
if uniforms are damaged, they
they
replace them.
replace them. Yeah.
Very good.
Okay, the next item is authorization to continue utilizing a contract with Mitel, which is our short-tail phone system, support services and upgrades and software maintenance. That cost is at $78,120. The original proposal was $82,000. Bill was able to negotiate that. The other thing he's recommending here is that we go with a 3-year contract instead of a 1-year contract, because going with 3 years saves about $6,300 a year to go with a 3-year contract as opposed to 1-year increments. And we're happy with the phone system, right, Bill?
Happy with the phone system, happy with this vendor. We did a 1 year because we had to switch off of another vendor because they weren't really keeping up with us and giving us the support that we needed through a couple of events. So in the course of this, we did several upgrades. We had several of our own tickets and they have been perfect. So taking an opportunity to try and save additional money and continue using this vendor who's been great so far.
And this 78,000 is for all 3 years, so we're just locking that in.
Exactly.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you all.
Costco up there, we saved a whole lot more than just the
It's
3,000.
interesting. They give us there's a lot of flexibility with the system we didn't have in the last one. For instance, employees can, their phones can go seamlessly from their desk phone to their cellular phone. Message keeping is a little bit better. For those of us that have it, the voicemails will actually pop up, voicemails to our office phone will pop up either on our cellular phones or our iPads so we can get them. And we're a lot better at being able to stay in touch with ShoreTel, with the MyTel system than we were with that previous system we had. Of course, we had sort of pretty well run it to the end of its useful life.
And that's one of the reasons why we got it is it was going to have.
Mr. Schofield can get in touch with us at any moment's time. Any moment's time.
You still have to answer though.
Wishful thinking.
Only some of us.
Only some of us, only some
Those
of
that
you.
answer their phone.
Well, the other thing is I remember some of the meltdowns that we had early on, and that wasn't with
No,
Microchip,
that's
that
why.
was with the previous, okay.
That's why we got off of
Where
that.
the whole phone systems were down and
Yep.
calls from residents to my personal cell and.
Yep.
So,
Revamped that whole system. We got off of that archaic architecture as well. So we
Okay.
went all new VoIP SIP. We can change anything. We went from only being able to take, it was only like 40 some odd calls to 2,500 calls at a time, if not more. So the
Very good.
expandability is there, and we are in the 21st century on that phone system finally.
Thank you.
All right.
Takes a while sometimes.
Thanks.
Okay, the next item is Resolution 2019-11. It is Blue Cypress replat number 2 at Palm Beach Polo and Country Club. What this really is it's taking lots 43 through 48 and replatting them into 2 lots. It just allows them to have a bigger lot or presumably a bigger house.
Much bigger house.
Mr. Lundin?
Taking 6 lots, making 2, takes all the setback requirements out of the equation, all the easements and that have changed accordingly, and it's pretty straightforward. I like it.
So one of these is your homes?
No. Oh, no. No.
Unless Michelle's making a lot more money than I thought she was.
No, that
What
was,
is-
I
what is-
shouldn't make those jokes.
How is this
It's
going to
not
look
funny.
comparative to the rest of the neighborhood now? I mean, is this how, this house is going to be dramatically larger than the others that are there?
One especially.
Right.
All pretty big.
Well, it gives them a bigger side yard. Yeah, both copies of the plats in your package. And the old plat, it shows, how the size of the lots are. They were about 65 foot wide, give or take by about 100 foot deep, and now they're 205 and 118 wide, and still 102 foot deep, give or take.
And it's more than 205 because you have to add the curves on
Yep,
those. So
yep,
you're,
Yep, you're absolutely
they're
right.
significantly large lots now.
I think what you're going to find with this is going to be like many other things in Palm Beach Polo. You're going to have some very large, very expensive houses, and these are going to be much larger, much more expensive houses. I don't think it will be, the size differential will be inconsistent with the neighborhood in general.
No, but if you look at the photo on 431, where you have house, 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 that's going to now be only 2,
Right.
and then it begins again. Okay. I mean, the neighbors are aware, other people are aware of this?
As a POA, do they have to weigh in on this at all?
No, I don't even know if there is a POA, but
Oh, I
no,
thought
this
there
is
was.
just
It hasn't been turned over yet. It's
developer
it's not
control.
done.
Oh,
Yeah. Could they not just do a unification of title on these lots and do the same thing, or no?
Well, they're splitting one of the lots.
Oh, they're splitting one of them half, okay.
In other words,
All right.
there's 3 lots, so the lots on either side are splitting that middle lot to make their properties larger.
All right. Well, it's always best to plat it anyway, so I'm glad it's gonna be platted. It's just easier to signify property ownership lines from now on, so, all right.
Okay, that brings us then to the two public hearings. And, wait, that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at.
Small cell wireless.
Yeah, it is ordinance number 2018-10, small cell wireless ordinance.
So this is, we had previously scheduled this for first reading, and we had some conversations with the providers like AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, that type of, the wireless providers. And they had some concerns. So we did postpone that, and we retained a consultant to assist us with revising the ordinance to try to take into consideration as many of the comments that were raised as we could, while still giving us the ability to regulate as much as we can within the confines of the preemption that the Florida legislature set forth in the statute. So this ordinance essentially goes through the process of review. It contains defined terms. It provides for an appeal process. It provides for registration. It provides general design standards. In fact, we even chose the look of the, if there's a need to install a new pole for the wireless, it even actually contains photographs of ones that we might find acceptable given the location. It sets height restrictions and setbacks and separation requirements, all within, to the extent we are able to regulate them. We are still having conversations with the providers, but we believe that this ordinance on first reading is in the best shape that, that it can be in to give us the most control while also trying to take into account some of their desires as well. So this is first reading. We are asking that you approve it, and we will bring it back to you in April for second reading.
I have a couple questions. The consultant that was hired to help us, because this is highly technical.
It is.
Did that come out of the legal budget or general?
It came out of the legal budget.
It did. So my other question is, does it take into account the new federal
Yes.
rules for FCC and
It
wireless?
does.
Okay.
It does. It takes both into account, and there were differences between what they call the shot clocks between the federal requirements and the state requirements. The federal requirements, we went with the more conservative, the shorter time period, so that we're sure that in our ordinance, under either the federal or the state requirements, we're well within the time frame for responding. Because what happens is once an application is submitted, it triggers certain time frames, and if you don't respond or do certain things within that time frame, it's automatically approved. And so all of that is provided here in the ordinance.
Did you take a look at the Royal Palm Beach ordinance that I asked you to look at?
Yes,
Okay.
and this is different from theirs, but we feel that this is a good ordinance for our community. The consultant that we hired has done ordinances for West Palm, for many other municipalities around the state, and has a good working relationship with the providers, which I think is important because we have to work cooperatively with them. We want to have a good relationship with them in order to make sure that they work with us when they put put these facilities in our rights of way, that they work with us to make it so that it's appropriate for our community.
Okay, so when the mayor references comparison to Royal Palm, and you say, well, our consultant has worked on West Palm, have we looked at all of those and
Yes.
compared?
Well, we've looked at them. I mean, I haven't compared them line by line. It's a very lengthy ordinance.
Understood.
But yes, I mean, we put our standards in this ordinance that were specific to our community. We worked with engineering, with Mr. Lundin, with Mr. Bartholomew to expressly incorporate the things that were important to Wellington, and to be able to regulate those types of things.
As far as we can.
As far as we can.
Based on
within
being
the-
carved into two corners here.
Exactly.
Their hands are pretty well tied, but where we can wiggle around, we
Yes.
find a way to wiggle.
Yes,
And we're doing the maximum.
Yes.
Maximum that we can.
that's correct.
To try to protect our community. It's of course going to be, I know that when Royal Palm passed theirs,
They had a
there-
lot of objections.
A lot of people came and objected from the industry, and the situation is they've already spent a lot lobbying Tallahassee to cut our knees out from under us once, and this is what we feel like we can do.
Correct.
And we feel confident doing it.
And it's not, they're not happy with this as well. But it is, to the extent we could incorporate their concerns without diluting our ability to control what we can control, we've done that. To the extent we couldn't, we've chosen not to incorporate those comments.
My biggest concern is I don't want anyone to come to us and say, well, I don't have good cell service because of this. And you don't feel like that's a valid complaint. We are providing everything possible for them
Absolutely.
to provide the cell service that our residents want and need.
Correct.
Except for, we're trying to apply community standards along the way.
That's exactly right.
Which they expect also, I think. Right.
Right.
Questions? All
On
right.
second reading, tomorrow night, the consultant won't be here, but we'll try to have the consultant here for second reading.
In case there's any technical questions that
Right.
are raised, we can.
Exactly.
And do we have anybody on staff, like, engineering will be here, so
I
if
think
it's something.
Patrick or it probably is the one that has been a little bit more involved. So he might be the one to.
Just in case there's
address some
questions that we
technical-
have.
Did you
Correct.
say we expected people to show up tomorrow to object to this?
Well, it's possible. It's possible. We're still having communications with them. We have a telephone conference, I thought it was today, but it's a week from today, or a week from tomorrow, with the industry representatives. But it is very possible that they will show up and object. But those objections are because perhaps we didn't incorporate all of their comments that they would have wanted in here. That doesn't mean that the ordinance doesn't comply with the statute and the federal law. It does.
Do we have anything from the consultant in writings? I mean, since he's not going to be here on first reading, any
You have the
opinion?
ordinance.
But I mean, is there any, like,
No, we don't.
additional materials that
No,
you
we
could
don't.
provide? Okay.
But if we have questions, I mean, the first reading is for that purpose also, to let the public know, let all of them know. So if we have any questions between tomorrow night and the second reading,
Oh, absolutely.
we'll have plenty of opportunity
Right.
to get that answered.
Yes.
Okay. All right, very well.
Okay.
All right, that brings us to the end of the agenda, and that item will be 8A, not 8B. Other than that, Lori?
I don't have anything.
The only other question I have is we're still looking to do directions in April. I have topics from two of you. If the rest of you think about it, if you could get them to me, I'd appreciate
Did
it.
we start looking for a date yet?
We haven't come up with a date yet. We'll start
Okay.
working on that.
Do you have topics for me? Do you have topics for me?
We've had a couple, I have 2 or 3 that we've talked about, but I don't have.
I want to ask, just to throw it out there, I would just like to have like time allotted for me to kind of rant a bit, not rant, but explain where I'm coming from on some of my thoughts. And I thought it might be good if we all said, okay, this amount of time, you get what you think is important to have in the discussion out, because it's not just one topic, it's somewhat comprehensive. So I I don't know how well a topic would cover.
Alls I intended to do with this is find out where you all had it. I'd asked for topics. This is going to be a council-driven thing. However you do that, you do it.
Yeah.
Staff's not going to, we'll answer questions if you have them. But I just wanted to see if there were some major ones that everybody wanted to touch on. And then I expect you're going to go wherever you want to go.
On that point, because the mayor makes a good point, I would stay here all night long to make sure that each of the 5 of us get an opportunity to say everything that they want to say on every topic. So that was one of the criticisms I had about last year's, was I felt like we got cut off before there was a point where there was real consensus or direction on where council was on a particular issue. So, I don't think there needs to be a time limit, so to speak.
We're not envisioning one. As
And that's
you-
not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that my thoughts, we don't have the opportunity. Due to the Sunshine Law, we can't talk about,
Right.
well, I think this or I think that, other than we all think that our recreation staff looks ridiculous in Lederhausen, but we thank them for that. We thank them for that. We thought it was
We
a really
appreciate
good
that.
addition. I mean, but that's what I'm saying is, I agree with you that we should have it all out, but I just want people to understand it's because we can't talk about the ideas we have that we might talk to residents about individually. We can't do that amongst ourselves. So this is our time to help staff, but I don't expect us to have a consensus of any sort. I mean, I think it's
Okay,
going to
well,
be
I
our
mean
throwing our ideas out there and thinking and mulling on them.
Right.
And then we'll have to come back, I think, another date and do a consensus, because I think there's just, if it goes any way that I would anticipate, there's going to be a lot of ideas floating around, and we're going to want to think about it.
Agreed.
Plus, we don't make decisions at workshops, so.
All right.
The only other thing is I note to remind you that Civics 101 has been canceled.
And this is the one
Wellington High School for tomorrow.
for Wellington High School, okay.
Do we know why that is?
Generally, we have multiple instructors now teaching civics at the high school, so trying to coordinate a large enough group, as we do with Palm Beach Central, has become more challenging. Mr. Sink has relinquished the single role he had as the only civics teacher before, and now we have multiple. So we're trying to work with them on regrouping on that.
Scheduling was the
So,
problem?
yeah, since
Okay.
you had multiple teachers, and while they generally are at the same spot in their lesson plans due to the requirements the school district has, it was difficult for them to be able to accommodate our schedule requirements for the multiple sessions we needed for Civics 101.
So could we, I would be willing, and I know the other council members would be willing to do a presentation to them in their classroom if it works out. Let them know that, because, we've done it at Wellington Landing several times. I've done it in public and different places where we talk about city government just as an overview. So throw that out there so that the 3 different teachers or whatever know they have the option of asking. And then if our schedules allow, we'd be willing to help, because we don't want them to miss out on
Oh, absolutely.
that great
And we'll let
experience
them
of
know
city
that.
government.
I think one of the challenges we have with the high schools is that their schedule requirements actually in class. I mean, it's actually even just the time that they would spend in class, so getting even a consistent time in their actual classrooms for during the civics class times is difficult, so we have to work on that. And as we know, the high school demands on after-school time, like we did with the middle school, is also challenging based on competing requirements, whether it be other school programs,
But we've
athletics,
gone
and
into their
everything.
classroom time. That's what I'm suggesting.
No, that's what I'm saying.
I
Their
would go
classroom
in-
time, but because they've got between now till the end of the year, they
Right, they
still
don't
have
have
to
an
cover a
opportunity.
certain amount of
Okay.
time,
Okay.
classroom requirements for
Right.
testing and that kind of
Right,
stuff.
I know,
so-
it's hard.
Yeah, we're gonna get better coordinated now but we know ahead of time, but we did not realize until it was a little too late that they had multiple instructors.
Very well. Anything else, Mr. Schofield? No?
Not for me.
Nothing from anyone else? All right. Meeting adjourned.
Right at 5.